Ordinarily a once-in-a-lifetime experience for many, a sightseeing flight in Antarctica would end in unimaginable tragedy. In this video we will hear the story of the Mount Erebus disaster, an event which would claim the lives of 257 people and change aviation forever. The 28th of November 1979, Ross Island, Antarctica. Air New Zealand Flight 901 is proceeding southward as planned. The crew prepare for a descent to provide their passengers a closer look at the Antarctic landscape. Flight 901 is no ordinary point A to B passenger flight, but instead a sightseeing tour of Antarctica, with passengers enjoying breathtaking views of the natural beauty below, with in-flight commentary from an expert guide, all while enjoying first-class level in-flight service. Air New Zealand has been offering these scenic flights since 1977, and they have operated for over 2 years without any serious incidents. They offer customers a rare opportunity to witness the untouched beauty of Antarctica from the air, including its islands, surrounding ocean, and even an active volcano, Mount Erebus. Mount Erebus is the southernmost active volcano on Earth and has an elevation of 3,792 metres or 12,441 feet, making it the highest point of Ross Island. The summit contains a persistent lava lake. Scientific study of the volcano is facilitated by its proximity to McMurdo Station and Scott Base, both sited around 35 kilometres away. The plane serving the sightseeing flight is a McDonnell Douglas DC-10, one of Air New Zealand's fleet of 8 of the type. The DC-10 is an American-made widebody trijet introduced in 1971. It was one of the first jumbo jets and designed to compete with aircraft such as the Boeing 747 and Lockheed Tristar. Being a 3-engined airliner allows it to be larger and carry more passengers on longer routes than a twin-engined plane would, at a lower cost than a 4-engined aircraft, making the DC-10 a very popular choice with airlines at the time. This particular example is a 30 series, a long-range model, perfect for the flights from and then back to New Zealand. Air New Zealand 901 left Auckland at 8 AM for Antarctica and will give the passengers a low-flying sweep as far down as 1,500 feet before returning via Christchurch for a 45-minute stop to refuel and change crew, then finally arriving back in Auckland for 7 PM, an 11-hour round trip. Shown here is real footage recovered from the actual flight, showing passengers inside the aircraft as well as the view outside the window. The flight will follow a carefully planned path designed to avoid hazardous terrain like mountains and glaciers. Navigation in Antarctica poses challenges due to the lack of ground-based navigation aids, instead relying on the onboard inertial navigation systems and visual cues. As 901 approaches Mount Erebus, they descend to 2,000 feet and expect to be flying down McMurdo Sound, a body of water which opens into the larger Ross Sea to the north. Visibility looks clear, and the crew observe no obstacles to their flight path. As air traffic control is limited and unable to track their exact position, the pilots will navigate by eyesight. Once they have passed down McMurdo Sound, giving them a good view of Mount Erebus to their left, they will circle back and retrace their path back to New Zealand. Taking the flight crew completely by surprise, the ground proximity warning system shrieks an alarm bell, followed by an audible command for them to pull up. The captain pulls the nose up and asks the first officer for go-around power, meaning to push the thrust levers to full throttle, allowing them to climb out as fast as possible. But it is too late, and they impact the lower slope of Mount Erebus. The collision is absolutely catastrophic and instantly destroys Flight 901, taking all 257 lives on board with it. Controllers do not hear from the flight after they are due to check in, and after the cut-off time in which the plane would have surely run out of fuel, Air New Zealand announces the loss of the aircraft. What follows is one of the most gruelling search efforts of any aircraft accident, named Operation Overdue. Searching the path the plane was due to make, their worst fears are soon realised. The impact site and wreckage from the jet is found, a long black streak across the ground, small fragments and recognisable pieces such as the tail, fuselage and baggage, as well as human remains. Due to the inhospitable conditions and remoteness of the site, the recovery of the victims' bodies and personal effects, as well as the flight recorders, take a lot longer than normal. The initial investigation by New Zealand's Transport Accident Investigation Commission places the blame squarely on the shoulders of the pilots, citing human error, flying at too low of an altitude as the primary cause. This finding leads to widespread criticism, as it is thought there is more to it than simple pilot error. A second investigation is opened, looking deeper into the events before and during the disaster, as well as the role Air New Zealand itself played. In this second inquiry, it is discovered that the flight path the crew were under the impression they were on that day, the same route all previous flights had taken, was actually wrong and located over 20 miles to the right. In fact, they shouldn't have been flying parallel to Mount Erebus over the McMurdo Sound at all, but the intended flight track would take them over Mount Erebus itself. This error had been discovered by the airline to have been the result of the coordinates being mistyped when entered into their computers, and the day before had been corrected to take them directly over the volcano. But the airline neglected to inform the flight crew of this change, and they were still under the impression they were flying over the water. Had they known that this was wrong, and they were in fact supposed to fly over Mount Erebus, then they wouldn't have descended to such a low altitude. The mismatch was found by the initial investigation, but it was still ruled that they shouldn't have been at that altitude regardless. However, the second inquiry finds that the airline had routinely allowed them to fly at such extremely low levels to provide a better view for its paying customers, as evidenced by a promotional brochure even having photos of the scenery clearly taken from way below the safe altitude. But if they were flying directly towards Mount Erebus and visibility was supposedly clear in front of them, then how did they not see a 12,000-foot volcano directly ahead? During the conditions the crew of Flight 901 found themselves in, a phenomenon known as sector whiteout can occur, when an overcast sky matches the colour of the snowy terrain below, creating an illusion of clear visibility. The pilot trusted the automatic flight path, assuming what he was seeing through the cockpit window was just the ice and snow on top of the ocean below, instead of what it actually was, the face of the mountain. These factors, coupled with the limited radar coverage over Ross Island, having no way to actually monitor the position of flights, was a recipe for disaster. The blame is this time given to Air New Zealand for not informing their crews to the change of the flight route, and they are found to have attempted to cover up their involvement. They had made moves to point the investigation in the direction of blaming the pilots, in what would famously be described as an orchestrated litany of lies. In a cruel twist of fate, one of the passengers had felt apprehensive about getting on the plane at the last minute, asking to leave, but was then convinced to return and reboarded the plane. Footage taken from inside the plane is seen to capture the exact second of impact, with what appears to be a fluid hitting the window, thought to be jet fuel or some other fluid from the plane. Flight 901 remains to this day New Zealand's worst peacetime disaster in history. It took over 2 decades for the victims' relatives to receive an official apology from Air New Zealand, but they, along with the government, finally would do so. After the accident, Air New Zealand unfortunately would no longer offer Antarctic sightseeing flights, but Qantas, who did so during the same time as arrival, still do, as well as a few private charters. Make sure to give the video a like rating if you enjoyed it for the time and effort I put into making it, and subscribe if you want to catch new episodes as I upload them. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.